Your birthday is the 20th, right? June 20th. Okay.
June 20th, yes.
And you were born in
Uh,
Chicago?
in Edison Park, which was
Is
a
that a
suburb
suburb?
of Chicago. And then
How long did you live there?
I lived there a year. And then we moved to Cincinnati. My father went into another firm, and he bought a big house up over the Ohio River. It was a Victorian house, a lovely old place, surrounded by a stone wall, and even had a summer house. And that's my first memory of my sister and my mother holding out their arms to me to see who I'd go to. I was just learning to walk.
You remember?
That's my first memory in the summer house. And so I think that I didn't walk maybe too early. I think I might have been near 2 years old. But I remember I went to my sister.
Oh, great. Well, how long did you live in Cincinnati?
Well, I lived until I was 10 years old.
You didn't actually live in the city, or was it more
in Cincinnati? Yes, I did live in the city in Cincinnati.
But
well, after my sister died, my mother couldn't stay at this house that we lived in, this lovely house, and so then we moved right into the city. This was a little way out of.
Yeah, that's what I
meant. Yes, I suppose it's called a suburb.
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
And then, what year did your sister die?
1907.
So I lived there for 5 years.
Then moved. Yeah. And then we lived there until my father went to the Diamond Match Company through his boyhood friends who persuaded him to leave Cincinnati and come with him. And I was 10 years old. And my sister was already married.
Oh,
yeah. So when we moved to Brooklyn, because that was the only place that my mother knew anyone. She hated Cincinnati, especially as Florence had just gotten married. And
Florence was how much older?
12. And so she knew one person in Brooklyn. So my father had picked out Tarrytown and picked out a house for us, but she wouldn't even look at the house. So we moved to Brooklyn, and the only child I knew went to the public school, so I went there 1 year. But I had been in private school all the rest of the time.
You mean you went to like a PS?
Yes, PS 152. And I was so shy that I couldn't get up to answer questions or anything. And I was absolutely miserable. I would go home every afternoon and cry. And so that's when the next year I went to Packard, which was this old school. It had been the Brooklyn Female Academy. And it was from kindergarten. You could go from kindergarten through 2 years of college. So I went.
So what year? What grade?
Well, let's see. I've been about 11 years old, and from then I went there. They didn't have any boarders. Day school, and went through 2 years of college.
Oh. Okay, so
I graduated on a Monday, and I was married on a Thursday night. And the whole class was invited to my wedding. The principal and teacher.
Didn't have time to go yet. But what was it like as a college? It was still a day college? You didn't live there?
No, it was a day college. And
did you have like sororities?
Yes, we had sororities.
And dances with that?
Yes, and there was a boys' school, Brooklyn Polytechnic, very near, and we did things. We had dances back and forth.
But you were super popular.
Well, not at first. I met him when I was 15. And so it was just that little time in between that I ever went with boys my own age. And because when I met him, he was 10 years older than I was, and he could take me any place that my family let me go. We only could go if Will drove us every place. after we were engaged, that was good.
When you were married, though, we got to go along. That's really good. But was Will pretty good as a chaperone?
Yes, oh yes, yes. He would report back to my family. I remember before I really began going with Papa all the time, another, well, a young man, he was younger than Papa, took me out, and we were sitting in the back seat, and he kissed me, and we all saw it in the mirror. And told my mother.
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that thing. I thought he did.
And then during the war, you see, I didn't meet Papa until he came home. During the war, he came home because he had discharge.
Oh, because didn't you get that?
Well, it was in a it was in a great big armory where they were working on engines for the army, and they didn't have any air in there, and they didn't know then about how harmful it was.
And that's how you got to see it.
Yes, that was the beginning of all his troubles. And but before I met him, I went back to Cincinnati every summer, and I met this friend of my sister's, and I was crazy about it. And he liked me too, and so we planned to elope before he went overseas when he found out he was.
And how old were you?
Well, I was less than 15.
Oh, so it's before him?
Yeah, it was before. And I used to get his letters. I used to walk up the street because my mother read everything that came in the house. And so there again, we all told her that I was.
Oh, that's a thing.
Yes, he was. That's what Ellis always said, and he used to always tell on Ellis.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yes. He didn't have anything to tell on about your mother.
Oh, well. So that's interesting. And then from Brooklyn, well, then you just,
Let's see,
Denmark. Well, you moved to
No.
Brooklyn with Papa.
We lived next door to each other. That's how we met.
Right.
And then he came home, and we lived in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn until I got married. And then my father said he'd build a house for us as a wedding present. So we found this lot in Pelham.
Oh, it's right, Pelham.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we lived there 5 years, and that's where Ellis was born. No, he wasn't born in Pelham because my family insisted I come back and stay for the last 2 months I was pregnant.
Oh,
so he was born there.
In your home?
In my mother's father's home.
And you were all born at home, just up
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Who was there then?
Well, we had a Christian Science first, and according to law, you have to have a doctor. So there was a doctor there, but when he just thought we were nuts. And when he found out that there was going to be no anesthetic, and he just sat reading the Saturday Post. And at the very end, I really I said, oh, I want that. And my mother said, no, don't give her anything. She doesn't need it. And he said, well, of course, now they do it that way.
Yeah, well, now it's one thing to do with that.
But at least you have some exercise to know what you're doing.
Because how old were you when you had Ellis?
I was married. Before my 21st birthday, I was married. And I didn't have him for 2.5 years.
That's so good, yeah. I mean, I would want to go to that in 2 years.
Well, when your mother was born, I made sure that, and I went to a registered doctor every month, and I made sure that I didn't call my mother until the baby was born.
Now, did you go to a doctor when you were pregnant with Ellis? I mean,
just once to find out that I was pregnant.
Really? Oh my goodness. Because your mother was pretty strict about it.
Yes.
So when you were born, there had to be a doctor?
When I was born, no. Yes, I had to be a doctor.
Yeah,
but my mother was Christian Science.
And you were born?
Yes, I was born at home.
So my mother did go to a doctor? Yes,
and I still had a Christian Science nurse. I don't know why I had it. Come to think of it, I was thinking I had it for Ellis, but I didn't. She was wasn't the same one. And the doctor was a Christian Science, he was the second doctor. But he was more used to it.
Yeah, I guess.
And I had done everything he said. I know it was nonsense. The other one, he was
Well, if you don't see a doctor from the time you're pregnant to the time, you don't know if the baby's going to be, you know.
I know.
It could have come out a little monkey and you wouldn't know it. I mean, my goodness.
Think of the chances you take. And here, when the baby was being born, Ellis's mother and father came over, and they were sitting with my mother and father downstairs. Will was walking up and down. There was a third floor in the house, and it was just a circus.
Yeah. Great. So, and my mother was born in Rochelle.
She was born in the Larchmont house.
On Larchmont.
Yeah.
On
Birchfield Road.
Birchfield Road.
Yeah.
And after the Birchfield Road house version?
Then we moved to Rochelle, Beachmont Drive.
Oh, Beachmont Drive.
And that was with my mother and father's house. And my father had died, and
after my mother was born?
Yes, this was after. I can't remember exactly how old your mother was, but I think she was maybe 11 or 12. She went to the local school there in a year or two before she went to Rome.
Marianne?
She had been a Marianne,
yeah,
but then we moved, so she went to the school in Rochelle. It was called Hardscrabble School, and then they changed it to Henry Barnum.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Farmer, then, yes. Okay, and then from there you moved to Pennsylvania?
Island Terrace. When she got married, we sold that house and we moved to Island Terrace. And then on account of the steps, the office emphysema, we had to get a house that was easier for him to get up to, so we bought that house on 10th Avenue.
Well, you must have bought that sometime in the 50s.
Yeah. I went to the same area.
Because all the time I remember you.
You don't remember Island Hills?
No.
Oh, no.
And how long did you live in New York City for?
Yes.
Did you sell, after you married, did you sell the house?
No, I didn't. I kept the house for 2 years and came back every weekend. And then it was kind of hectic coming back, and new clothes were always now in place. And so I thought, well, this is foolish, and we decided that he was going to retire and we'd travel eventually. And so I was just in there that short time.
Right.
It was less than 2 years. That's the only time I ever lived in the farmhouse.
Oh, you lived in the houses.
Yes, that question.
Yeah, okay. And other relatives didn't live with you besides this?
No.
But your parents supported?
My father supported both families so that they could have their own homes.
But you and Papa didn't have to support your parents?
No.
That didn't happen the next time? Your parents were wealthy?
Yes, and his parents were...
Well, why were your grandparents, why did they need help from your parents?
Because my grandfather, when he was about 50 years old, he just said he'd worked long enough and he wanted the children to support him. Well, my father was the only one who was able to support them because my mother had 3 brothers, and there was a bachelor brother that lived in my grandma and grandfather, but the others had families and they couldn't afford to.
Well, what did your father do for you?
Well, he was a salesman. He was always a salesman. And he was vice president of the Dime Match Company, in charge of all the sales.
Oh, right.
And that's how I happened to be the little Fairy soap. Because he named that soap. They were bringing on new soap. That's when he lived in Cincinnati. And he thought up this name of wanted children. And so the first time I was there, I was 9 months old, and I had the baby cap on and a dress at that time, and babies at that age, the dresses just came to their ankles. When they were smaller, younger than that, they had the long dresses. Almost to the floor.
Yeah, I had to get some. Don't we have little cars?
We do up at the ferry.
I'm going to take my head.
Yeah.
I want to get something. Their little fairy eyes.
Because the only thing you could do Pleasantville.
Oh. Okay, let's see. Okay, and you always lived in these suburbs. You lived in the city, a little bit of Cincinnati for a while, and a little Brooklyn isn't really a city.
Yeah.
But it's kind of.
Yeah.
Did you ever live way out in the boonies?
No.
No. Okay. Really, so. But you never lived like in an apartment in the city.
No, I never was in an apartment until I went into New York and then here.
And did married people of your time live with you?
Very few of the people that I knew.
Because you were relatively wealthy, right? I mean, if you had the money, as soon as you got married, you got your.
Yes, they got apartments. I don't know any of them that had the luck I did with their fathers built them a house.
That is.
But
all your friends at least had apartments?
They did have apartments, yeah.
I would think that'd be a horror, spending your first few married years with your parents. It seems a lot of people had that. And you had servants? Well, you had Will.
We always had 2 servants, Will and a cook.
While growing up?
Yes, yes. And
did the cook live with you?
Sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. And they had a nurse for me, so there were 3 servants until I got maybe going to kindergarten.
But Will was kind of relaxed, wasn't he?
Well,
I mean, he would.
Yes, then he would take me every place.
But he was practically part of the family.
Yeah, people thought he was my father in school because he'd take me and pick me up.
And he did wear a butler's uniform.
Yeah,
he did.
And when we got a car, he wore a chauffeur suit too.
And when did your father find him?
Well, that was before I was born. And he was walking the railroad track, a real hobo.
Really?
And he asked if he could sleep in the barn. And in those days, he drank quite a lot. They didn't know that when he came. And so my father said yes, he could. So the next morning, he asked if there was any work he could do. But he didn't have any job, and he was just walking, trying to find a job. So my father said, yes, there's work around here. And so that's the way he started. And his background was rather a mystery.
Did you ever find out?
No. Well, after he died, I advertised in the paper where he said he came from, this little town in Illinois. But we never heard anything, and so he didn't leave a will, and he didn't have too much saved up, but it all went to Massachusetts. That's where he died. I was allowed to spend...
Yeah, he's buried in West End.
Yes. And I could spend on his funeral, so we had a church funeral, and I bought that plot with his money, and then the rest went to the state, which happens when people don't leave wills.
Yeah, and then, leisure time.
Well, I just had kind of a fabulous time, and my mother father thought that I was lonesome, that I was like an only child. Now, actually, I was not lonesome. I liked being alone.
Yeah.
And I had never known anything other really, because my sister being so old, and she was away at school before she got married. And so I have always kind of then. I was spoiled, there's no doubt about that. And my sister was the apple of my mother's eye, and I was the apple of my father's.
Oh, but your father has the money anyway.
So they took me every place, and when they moved to New York, and they were the kind who loved to go places, theaters, movies, with the best restaurants, and they always took me with them. And when I was about to become a teenager, I even had little evening dresses and a little evening coat. Yeah. And we went to these fancy restaurants like Shanley's and where the Rector's famous restaurant.
So you didn't have much of a childhood.
Well, I did because I played too. I mean, I had friends from school, and then my father always took places in the summer, and I could always invite a friend for the whole summer if I wanted to. And then my sister began having babies, and I just loved her children, and I had them, and they used to come and spend the summer at any of these places. Some were on the Jersey Shore down in Long Island.
Oh, where in Long Island? The Hamptons?
No, it was Oyster Bay. And then my father bought the place at the Cape, and then from then on, we went up to the Cape. But what I wanted to tell you about was when I was young, they were so wonderful to me, and I just had a great time, and we had a lot of relatives that lived out in the Middle West, and they were always visiting, and I had cousins to be there in the summer, and so I really had a wonderful time, but it spoiled me because ever since I love to be entertained. I love to go out. I love to do things. Both my mother and father were that way.
Well, did you have any hobbies or anything?
I used to swimming and tennis. I was never any good athletically.
But you did do?
Oh yes, I had lessons and places we went. I always did that.
Did you have to wear those long dresses playing tennis?
Oh yes, yes.
That's silly.
Yes, and then
that's been impossible to do.
It was.
Did you have some type of comfortable shoe to wear? Like
well, we had sneakers. And as far as bathing costumes, they were just hard.
Well, it must have been so heavy when you were wearing.
So heavy.
People must have drowned. And also playing tennis in those hot actors.
Yeah.
See why you gave it up.
Ridiculous.
But it was mainly for the elegance, so it wasn't tennis just for
elegance. Yeah, and just to meet people.
Yeah.
But I would never go to camp. I was offered it, but I always had such a good time at home.
Same here, I never went to camp.
I never wanted to go. And so I never really went away from home until I was married, because the plan was before I decided I wanted to get married, but after the 2 years college at Packer, then I was to go to Vassar, and my name was... yes. You went in I see it would be the junior year.
Right.
It's been 2 years. But of course I got married instead, and so when
Did you want to go to college? Or did you
I don't think I really wanted to go too much. No, I was just going because everybody else was going to Packer. I can't think of anyone who didn't go to college in my class. We had a class of over 50. And but of course when I fell in love, I think all I thought about was getting married, and so my father begged us to wait until I graduated. So we did. So we were engaged all those years. I have.
So how many years?
Engaged.
Well, let's get engaged.
Well, let's see. It was. I guess I was 16 or so, maybe 17. So we were engaged until I was almost 20. I had my birthday after I was married.
Yeah, well, you're in Your anniversary
was June 15th.
Right,
my birthday was.
And wasn't Papa's birthday in July?
June. June 1st.
June 1st, right.
Yes.
June 1st.
Yes, it was born in June.
And then for vacations, you went all over the place.
Oh, I went all over. Yes, that was another thing I was going to tell you. My father loved to travel, so besides taking these houses, we'd always have a trip. And we went every place, and I saw all the national parks, and I went to all the World's Fairs, San Francisco, San Diego, and the Chicago World's Fair. That was after I was married. In fact, your mother was about 2 years old when I went with him on that. And Ellis went too at that time. But we traveled every place. And then when I was 13, he went to the Orient on business, and he was gone 3 months. And that's when I went to Hawaii the first time. And then we went to Japan and China and Korea. And we were supposed to go into Russia. But the war was starting.
That was 1915.
It was 1960. Yes, it was 1915 that we left, and we were away New Year's Eve. We spent on the ship.
Yeah, that would have been good to be around that time.
And so we got way up at the top of China. Yes, China. And they wouldn't bother taking me in because the revolution had started, and they were taking women and children off trains, stopping trains. So he was on business, so he went ahead, and
you guys stayed in China?
We had to come back. And we came back.
How long was he in Russia for?
He was in Russia 3 months, and we didn't hear anything.
That's what I was going to say.
We didn't know what had happened to him.
And
yes, but he had quite an adventure. He was on a ship from China into Russia, and a terrible storm came up, and the whole ship was covered with ice, and they almost sank. But then when he got to Russia, when he really enjoyed it, he could do sightseeing because they were so far away from the front.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get any word through. And I'll never forget when he came home, he looked like a Russian. He had on this long coat with a fur collar and had those fur hats.
Really? That's silly.
Yeah.
What was Hawaii like when you visited?
Oh, well, of course, it was beautiful. There was no...
Because you just went...
the ship.
Yeah.
We went up to Canada, and the ship sailed from there. We went on a Canadian ship. And the first stop was Hawaii. And
what's the difference between it now and...
Oh, it's a big city with high-rise buildings.
And it wasn't?
Oh, no. And there was no traffic. Hardly anyone even had cars. And the natives... It was just a big flower garden. And now it's a huge city with this terrific traffic.
Resort area.
Yes, and...
Did a lot of people go to Hawaii then?
No, it was very, very unusual for anyone. And for anyone to go on to China and the Orient. And then we went to Japan, and it was so unusual for them to see foreigners, and I had long blonde hair then, that they would come up and touch my hair, and we went in a shop to buy a kimono from me. And so many people came in, they had to rope me off to keep the people from touching. And we would go to these dinners where the geisha girls would sit in front of you, and they were supposed to entertain you. And they would just have fun with me. I was on 13, I put my hair up, and there were a lot of young men that at that time went out to work for the Standard Oil. And they made a fuss over me because there was just one other girl, 17, on the ship. So they all danced with us, and we played cards, and it just, there again, it spoiled me because by the time I got back, these boys, 13 or 14, looked to me like dopes.
Yeah, I can see that. But which did you like better, Japan or China?
Well, it was hard to say.
Was either less civilized or less? Wasn't China way behind the times?
Yes, although the cities weren't. Shanghai, and they had very good hotels there. The country was very backward, but they did have trains that took us from one place to the other. And then we came back on a Japanese ship. Going over, it took 17 days. Coming back, and there again we stopped at Hawaii. It took 23 days on this Japanese ship.
What was it like 23 days on the ship?
Well, on account of all these young people. It was fun.
Yeah.
And the other girl, her family stayed over just about the same time that mine did, and so we met on the way back. I guess it was kind of arranged because my mother felt so sad that she had to come back without my father. The buffets waited for us so we could get back and go on the ship.
Yeah, that with sickness in your.
Well, we were Christian Scientists.
But you didn't have any terrible illnesses?
Evidently not. And the only thing with my children I can remember was, I'm sure they had whooping cough, but I found it school, but they were sent back.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
But didn't you have, when did you change from Christian, or when did you stop?
When my father died.
Oh.
I was just so upset because I knew that he could have been helped.
Oh, right. How did he die?
Strokes.
And
he had no medication, nothing done. And my mother died of a stroke. My sister, all the same way. Just with a Christian Science nurse and a Christian Science practitioner.
Well, it was fortunate for you. Didn't you have a serious operation?
That was after.
Yeah, right after.
Well, it was before my mother died. But there again, if I hadn't had the operation, I guess I wouldn't have lived.
Yeah, that's what my mother said.
Yes. No. And so from then on, I really didn't go to any church until I went to the Congregational Church in Scarsdale.
Right, we passed that.
Because I like Dr. Anderson so much, and he's the one that married us.
Oh, right.
Norman and I got married. We went to Washington.
Yeah.
To be married.
But you haven't been associated with any church since then?
No, I haven't. I've gone with Norman to the Quaker meetings every once in a while, and not really associated.
But so you don't have any childhood memories of people getting sick? When they didn't feel well, did they ever stay home or just
Not much, and I can remember my mother one time having a terrible fall down the steps, and she was going to a party, and she was knocked unconscious, but she went to the party when she came to, and she was absolutely all bruised over. When I saw her the next day, she went. Yes, and
I guess that's
the way that's the way we were, and I had to really keep it a secret that my teddy bear was not a Christian Scientist because I liked to give him medicine. So it shows how I really, I was never a Christian Scientist maybe because, but I kept that from my mother.
You didn't really believe in her. What did you think? What did they say?
I couldn't accept so much of it.
Yeah, I guess.
But my mother was a disciplinarian in the family, especially with me, and so I was quite sneaky. I never told her the way I really felt.
When you were a little kid, did you notice that other children went to doctors?
Oh, yes, and I would keep it a secret that I was a Christian Scientist because I felt very odd, I felt.
People would punch you just to see what would happen, you know. Look, she won't be brought to the doctor. Look, you're terrible.
Yes, I kept that a secret, and I kept the secret that President Johnson was in the family picture because he was impeached, almost impeached.
Well, what is he really, how is he really?
It was through my father, and my father's middle name was Johnson, and so I don't know exactly how it was, that it was my father's mother, and just as she was Mark Twain's cousin. Her name is Kate Clemens, and they were born in Kentucky at the same time.
Okay, so
okay. We just had a Christian Science practitioner on us. Well, I said that my son really, in a way, followed in his dad's profession because he was a salesman.
Right.
And that's the papa was always a salesman working for his father.
But was that a usual practice?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And about big decisions.
My father made big decisions about us moving.
But did your mother have a lot of input? She sounds kind of.
Oh yes. She did. And he was always trying to please her. And I remember in the mornings at breakfast table, we'd always look at Mother to see what kind of humor she was in.
Oh, I see. So it's not that.
Yes. Oh, yes. She was a very dominated, but people liked her so much. She had a sense of humor, and she was pretty, and she was fun. And my cousins and Aunt Barbara, for instance, they had more fun with her. Now, I never had that fun with her because I was always afraid of her.
Yeah, I can see that.
I didn't let her know that we drank. I tried to keep everything from her.
Yeah.
It made me very sneaky.
Yeah. Sly foxes.
Yes.
Okay, and you were disciplined by your mother?
Yes, and when I was little, I used to wait for my father to come home, and I'd be saying to myself, I'd be in bed being punished. As soon as he comes home, he'll get me up, and he did.
I see, so your father.
Yeah.
Your father. And about your grandfather embezzling money?
Yes, well, the people he worked for, he embezzled money, and they found it out, and so he had.
So did he leave this?
He had to leave St. Louis.
And just the city?
He went hiding someplace.
He didn't leave the country?
No, he didn't leave the country. But his background was more or less mysterious, too, because he came from England, and he just appeared in Newport, Kentucky. My grandmother at that time had a boarding house because her husband had died, and she had all these.
Now, is this grandfather on your mother's side?
No, it's his father. It was my father's father.
So it was after your father died that your mother told you that?
Yes. And I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it.
Must have been quite a burden on your father.
Yes, and he used to give money to his sister. He was very generous. He was always supporting people, and he did more things that we didn't know he'd done until after he died. He lent people money, and he liked to help people. And he liked everybody to have a good time. He used to always call himself the entertainment committee. And he was always trying to fix up things so people could go places and go to the theater and do things.
And sitting around, well, see, it was only your mother, your father, and you, right?
Yes, and my father sat at the head of the table. And then when I was married, my papa sat at the head of the table.
But when you were married, did you sit to the side of him or at the other end of the table?
Other end of the table.
Right, very.
Yes.
But what was dinner conversation like? Was it very structured when you were growing up? Did you have to discuss?
No.
No. Because I mean, I have a dinner table. I mean, we just scrambled around.
Well, we lived formally, you see, because Will used to wait on the table, and then when I was first married, I had a couple for the first few years I was married. I wasn't paying him; he was working for the post office, but for them to have a room and board, why he used to wait on the table, and when I had parties, he would serve.
Okay. About son-in-law getting home.
Well, You mean my father's?
Yeah,
my Father's Day?
Yeah, first, when did your father, when did you first put it in marriage?
He started to work when he was about 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
Because his father never made very much, and they had all these children, and my grandmother, being a Southerner, always had to have somebody, a maid, taking care of the children. She didn't know how to cook at all. And so...
When did he get married?
He was 22.
And was his wife?
And his mother was 1 year younger.
Just 1 year. She was like 21. And was that the average age of people getting married? Or?
Well, her mother got married at 16, and she married a man who was 32.
Was that exceptional for her to be married at 16? Like your friends, when did they get married?
Well, my friends got married after college mostly. I was a little younger because I didn't go through the last 2 years of college.
So you did pretty much go through.
Yes.
And your father's time? I mean, I know your father's time.
Yes. Well, I think they married young in those days.
And people try and make it sound like people getting married at 15, 16.
Well, as I say, my grandmother did. And I think that might have been unusual.
Yeah. And since you didn't live with your parents when you got married, you didn't leave home until you got married, right?
No.
That was usual practice for girls. But would the son leave home before he got married to maybe start out on their own?
They have jobs, but I think they live with their family.
Yeah, until they got married.
Yeah, until they got married.
And did your parents help them out? Well, your father,
my father did, and I always got an allowance. All the years till he died. He always did an allowance. He always bought cars, the cars we had, and he would pay for a lot of things. And well, I don't know now. In my family, Ellis went to prep school, and so he left home at that age, and then went right into the Army.
Oh, he did, yeah.
Yeah,
the Army.
At 18, you see,
when he came back from the Army, though.
When he came back, he was with us until he went to college. But he and Jean had eloped. And then told us, and then she found out she was pregnant, so she joined him in college. So they lived in college, but after he got out of college, he lived with us. So I think they lived almost 2 years with us until he could afford an apartment.
So he did live with you.
Yes, he did live. And your mother and father lived with us for a short time.
Oh, they did?
Yes, and I never thought they would, because your father was so upset with Philip because I don't think he lived with him, but he thought that he depended too much on his mother and father. Took money.
I didn't know they were, when they were first married?
Yes, when they were first married, until they could find an apartment they could afford. I don't think, it wasn't a year or anything like that.
Yeah, because I know
months.
In the home photos we have of when Kim was born, there at the
yes.
But that's only 13.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I can't remember, but it might have been 5 months or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people did at that time.
Okay, now did you plan having your children when you did?
Yes, I did.
You did, and
I
mean, you just kept trying, and the children appeared.
Yes. I was so worried about I was so afraid I wasn't going to have any children, because my friend Muriel had 2 children before I had Ellis.
Oh, I see. And then
she had 2.
And then 6 years later, you had another.
Yeah.
And that's all you.
That's all. Yeah.
And then, did your parents just?
My parents planned. My father really wanted this child.
So we just kept trying.
Yes, until.
Because you were so spaced apart.
Yeah.
Well, your younger sister.
But she was between us, but there was 6 years difference.
And there was no birth control then? I mean,
no.
And the children were 6 years apart?
Well, yes, I was birth.
Yeah, but I mean, your parents weren't using it?
I don't know whether they used it.
Yeah, I mean, just, it's interesting that
I've
6
often
years apart.
wondered if they did. Maybe they did. I really don't know. Of course,
I don't think you would plan
primitive, but
I'm sure you wouldn't plan to have kids 6 years apart.
I think so.
And this child, see, I had to think of a theme to use on my, because I can't just do your whole, but see, you had a very, I guess, glamorous life for a young woman.
Well, put it this way, it was unusual. I mean, it wasn't what the average girl was having at that time.
Did it affect anything when you got married and started having a family of your own? Did you expect to travel all the time? The thing I remember most is they keep telling me when Kim was born, she always used to go out to restaurants and stuff. You would take my parents.
I know. You'd see there again. Because my father set this pattern. To me, the most important thing was everybody going out to a restaurant, having a good time.
And you carry that over.
Yeah.
But did you, when you were bringing up Ellis and my mom, was it that same type of thing? Did you go out a lot?
No, we couldn't afford to travel. We just went up Cape Cod summer, and we couldn't really afford to take the children. I know Ellis, when he was little, used to always say, "Oh, I wish other Papa was coming, because then I could order steak." That's, because Ellis never made much money. His father held him down, so I tyrant.
Oh, because he worked for his
father. Yeah.
So you didn't resent him? Resent not being able to travel, did you? I mean,
no, I was having a good time.
Yeah.
And I had my children. I didn't.
Did you like being a mother?
Yes. Because I was so fond of my sister's children and had been through them at all stages, so I could hardly wait to have my own children. And I always, even as a little girl, always playing mother or playing maid. I used to like to play maid and clean things up. Now, isn't that strange?
That is interesting. But you had a maid for a while when you
were married? Yeah, we had this couple for a while, and then I always had a maid until the war came, and that was after.
But did your mother? Did you learn how to cook? And
the cooks we had would never let me in the kitchen. So after we were married, we were home until our house was finished. It wasn't quite finished, and so I went to cooking school at the Pratt. It was called the bridal course. At Pratt College. Yes, and I'd bring home all these little things I'd made, and I would insist that Ellis eat them. And of course, he'd much rather be eating the food than he's being served.
I was wondering how people learn how to cook.
I knew how to make fudge. That was actually the only thing I'd ever. Now, Papa could cook a little. He knew much more about cooking than I did, because they would be without maids. One cook we had stayed 17 years, and you see, Will stayed 50 years, so we didn't have too many coming and going.
Yeah.
They stayed with my mother, although she was very strict about everything.
She sounds it.
Yes.
Quite a strict young woman.
Yes.
I guess. Well,
I guess that's it.
Anything else you want? Any special anecdotes or memories you have?
I think I've told you.
Did you go out shopping with your friends after school?
Yes. See, the school was right downtown Brooklyn. So we'd always go and get a Sunday scrap. And then we loved to.
Did you wear long dresses with school?
Well, they were kind of ankle-length. And we must have looked horrible, because we would wear our dressy dresses after they got old to school. Now, this went on until I think about maybe 14 or 15, and then suddenly the styles changed, and skirts and sweaters came in, and then we looked.
Oh, in the 20s.
Well, no, this was, let's see, this would be about 1916 and 17. And then we began to look more appropriate.
Oh, I
for
see.
Dress.
So for a while there,
Yeah, I can't understand how our parents ever let us do this. It was so silly to wear dressy dresses, because they were dressy in those days.
Well, I remember when we were in Florida and we were watching the Triangle Fire movie.
Yes.
And people were walking in these long dresses and all sorts of
Yeah, well, now that was more my sister's days. We didn't wear them that long, so they trailed now.
Yeah.
Now. And then we were called flappers. And then at the time I was married, the dresses were very short, way up at our knees. But then I had a long train on this dress.
And what year were you married?
22.
Your papa was 10 years old.
Yeah. And he lived at home. He never had an apartment. He stayed home until he got married.
And you met him by living next door?
Yes. Yeah.
Through the family? What did you do on dates?
Well, we would go to the movies.
But Will would have to go with you?
Well, he had to, not the movies. We could walk to the movies. And when we went to the theater in Brooklyn, we could take the subway, go that way. But if we went to parties, dances, or restaurants in New York, and the tea dancing was a great thing when you go to tea dancing. And of course, the boys my age, they couldn't afford to take the tea dancing. But Papa could. And so we would go to the plaza and different places, like that kind of thing. And there were parties, and I always think of my youth as parties.
I guess. Would one person throw a party at their home?
Yes. And we used to play cards, too, when we were very young. When we were 13, 14, we'd have card parties at our houses without no boys. But then we'd have parties and invite boys and dance, and they would dance to a great big gramophone music. And most everybody took dancing lessons and music lessons.
Did you play an instrument?
No, just piano, and I never really learned. And voice lessons I took.
Oh, really?
Because my family knew somebody who gave them, and they were helping him out. I used to hate to take them because I was really very shy, and I didn't like to sing or
singing.
Play or anything like that. I've always found it hard to get up and talk, speak in any organization. Did war work. I never liked it.
What did you do during the war?
Well, I volunteered. I was a nurse's aide. And
where'd you work in?
Well, I worked in Rochelle Hospital, and then I was on the island. I can't think of what island off near Rochelle. They had a they had a military hospital there. For a while, they had German prisoners. Yes, and we were in the hospital doing the same kind of thing as nurses' aides do. And then after the war, then I worked at the New York Hospital, Westchester branch in White Plains, mental hospital. And we were training them to work with the soldiers when they came back. And I found that very fascinating. And there were so many famous people at that place.
Really?
Actresses and movie stars. And they were in there some were in for alcoholism, and others were in there because had nervous breakdowns. And
do you remember any specific?
Yes, Jean Tierney was there, and let's see, and society people too, people whose names are society persons.
So you leave me in a mental hospital.
Yes. So then after the war, the only hospital, military hospital, was way up the Hudson, beyond McKinley's. And so I went up there and I worked in the psychiatric ward up there.
Now, this was World War II?
Yes. But it was too much of a trip. It was now in the active room. So did that up, and then I didn't work in the hospital until I started working at Greenwich Hospital.
And that's the only work as volunteer work. You've never...
I've never earned a penny. And I did anything.
Well, volunteers and all that. My mom's a big volunteer too.
Yeah. So it's more worthwhile volunteer.
Because I mean,
But in World War I was very young, and I did war, but a lot of it had to do with dancing with soldiers at the canteen.
keep them entertained.
They had committees that would round up girls from different schools or colleges, but I did work in it was a tea room. And the money must have been given to some canteen. I was a waitress in this tea room. And that was kind of hard work.
Yeah.
We wore our uniforms. I found something the other day in there. The certificate I got.
Reynolds. 1990. Oh my goodness. I was wondering why they never made new ones. The services rendered during the World War. It looks in such good shape. I mean, it doesn't look that yellowed. I just unless you made that. Pretty impressive.
And Brooklyn, yeah. And we had blue uniforms with white aprons and little white caps, kind of like nurses.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned nurses wore.
Yeah. I'm just amazed. I mean, it looks so new.
It does. It's much better than my diploma. That's a wreck.
Must be made out of something different. So
I don't know how it got down here. It was up at the Cape.
Yeah, you have scrapbook somewhere.
Yeah.
Between houses.
There's one lost that has a lot of pictures of trips to China and the young men that danced with and had such fun.
Have you had a genealogy done, or?
No. There, on my mother's side, there's a book.